You are used to thinking that the life of a Native American fisherman is all about nature, freedom, and harmony with the river. In reality, it is an endless cycle of cold, hunger, filth, and humiliation. Every single day begins in darkness and ends in despair. Your hands are always wounded. Your home is always filled with smoke and arguments. Your hope is always as rotten as the last fish you managed to catch. But before you get comfortable, make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel and let me know in the comments which city you're watching from and what time it is where you are. I'm genuinely curious to see who's joined us. Now, get comfortable. We're about to begin. You wake before the sun, not because you are eager, not because you are well rested, and certainly not because you love your life, but because sleep is a rare luxury. You wake because your body has learned, after endless repetition, that in this world, the one who hesitates starves first. You open your eyes to darkness and the sharp, bitter cold that fills every gap between woven reeds and rough, stretched skins above your head. It is always cold here, even in the times the elders call summer, a word that means nothing to you but slightly fewer shivers at dawn. Your home is not a place of comfort. You do not have a pillow, only a bundle of dried grass that pokes your face and neck. Your blanket is a mangy hide, stiff with old blood and fish scales. The floor is dirt, always, unchangingly dirt. Every surface seems to hold the memory of 1,000 miserable mornings like this one. There is the sour stench of smoke that never truly leaves, a permanent, greasy fog that clings to your skin and hair. There are the faint smells of mildew, rotting meat, and wet dog, each fighting for dominance in the stale air. The wind whistles through the cracks, stealing what little warmth you have left, and you curse quietly because curses are cheaper than food. You hear the others around you, a shuffling, a groan, the rattle of someone's cough. No one speaks. The day does not begin with songs or joy, but with silence, dread, and the slow acknowledgement that you are still alive and therefore must suffer a little longer. You do not need to see their faces to know their thoughts. You all share the same single, desperate hope that maybe today things will be less terrible than yesterday. You know this hope is a lie, but you cling to it anyway, because hope is the only thing that cannot be taken by hunger or cold. You rise, already aching. Your feet are cracked and numb, your hands raw and swollen from yesterday's work. Dirt is packed deep under your fingernails. It will never come out, no matter how hard you scrape. Your joints creak as you move. You are still young, though you feel ancient, because here, youth ends the moment you are strong enough to work, and old age is a myth. No one grows old. The world takes you before you get the chance. There is nothing to eat this morning. Of course not. There never is. Your belly gnaws at itself, the pain as familiar as your own shadow. If you are lucky, you may find a frozen root or the brittle remains of last night's fire to chew for warmth. You are not lucky. No one is lucky here. You force yourself to stand, to move, to pretend that this is normal, because in truth, it is. This is your inheritance. The elders say it was not always like this, that once life was easier, the fish more plentiful, the winters more gentle. You have heard these stories so many times, they have become a cruel joke. Every year, the river gives less, the cold lingers longer, and you wonder if perhaps the land itself hates you. You dress in what you have. Your clothing is a patchwork, tattered, dirty, stitched and restitched, until nothing remains of the original but the smell of old sweat. Your shoes are little more than scraps of hide tied around your swollen feet. Every step you take is a reminder that the world is sharp and unforgiving. You glance at your tools, your inheritance, your curse. They wait for you in the corner, dull and battered, as tired as you are. Nets with more holes than knots. A knife, chipped and blackened, baskets that leak. Nothing in your possession is new or strong or reliable. Everything is old, weak, and ready to betray you at the worst possible moment. You step outside into the dim, pre dawn light, greeted by a world that seems eager to punish you for daring to exist. The ground is frozen mud, slick and uneven, ready to send you sprawling into the filth at any moment. The air bites your cheeks. Somewhere, far off, you hear the cry of a bird, an omen, perhaps, but you do not care what it means. You have no time for omens. Today, you will go to the river as you have every day since you were old enough to carry a basket. You will freeze, you will ache, you will bleed, you will do all of this for the chance, just the chance of bringing home enough fish to keep your family alive for one more night. And if you fail, you do not think about that. There is no room for fear or doubt, only motion, only routine, only the endless gray struggle that is your life. So you walk, and as you walk, you remind yourself this is normal. This is what it means to live. You are not a hero. You are not a villain. You are just a fisherman, trudging through the cold toward another day that will be, in every important way, exactly like the last. There is a certain comfort in that sameness, a dull, numbing certainty that at least you know exactly how bad things will be. And so, step after step, you move forward. The mud pulls at your feet, the cold bites your skin, and somewhere behind you, someone coughs. The day has begun, and you are already tired. You do not remember a time when your tools were new. Maybe, long before you were born, someone in your lineage held a net with every strand whole, a basket that did not leak, a knife that could slice clean through a fish without snagging and stopping. You, however, live in a world of repairs. Every morning, you gather your equipment, and every morning, you are reminded that nothing you own is truly yours. It is borrowed from time, borrowed from the people before you, borrowed from the river that seems to hate you as much as it feeds you. Your net is your greatest treasure, which is almost funny. Treasure should be beautiful, precious, admired. Your net is a patched together monstrosity, more holes than fibers, each knot a memory of a previous failure. The fibers are rough and uneven, twisted from dried plants and chewed at by mice in the night. Your fingers fumble through them, searching for places where the weave has slipped, where the holes have grown. Every day, the holes seem larger. Every day, you tie more knots, make more promises to yourself that tomorrow you will make a new one, a better one. And every day you know it is a lie. The river does not wait for your plans, and time is always running out. Next comes your basket, or what you call a basket. It is more of a loose arrangement of splinters and old reeds, held together by stubbornness and fish slime. The bottom is soft and spongy from endless dampness, and when you shake it, you can hear the faint rattle of sand and tiny stones, too small to pick out, too numerous to ignore. You know that if you ever managed to fill it with more than a handful of fish, the weight would tear it apart. But that is a problem for another life, a life where fish are so plentiful that the basket's destruction is something to worry about. Your knife, once sharp and straight, is now a dull, blackened sliver of stone lashed to a handle with a strip of sinew. The blade is chipped, the handle split and stained. You have sharpened it so many times that its edge is no longer trustworthy. Sometimes it slips and bites your hand instead of the fish. The pain is familiar, part of the job, like hunger and cold. You search for your fishing hooks, a handful of bent bones and carved wood. Each is unique, each with its own flaws and quirks. Some are so small they vanish if you drop them in the dirt, others so large they frighten away the fish. You sort through them, picking the least terrible ones. You do not bother hoping for perfection. Perfection is for the spirits, not for you. There is the matter of cordage. The twine you use is rough, made from plant fibers twisted together until your fingers blistered and bled. It frays in your hands, tangles when you try to unwind it, and always seems to be just a little too short for what you need. You have spent so many hours spinning and knotting that you could do it blindfolded, and sometimes you think you are. Sometimes you wonder what it would be like to have a length of cord that was strong and smooth, something that did not feel like it was about to fall apart, just as you throw your line into the water. But then, if you had such a thing, what would you complain about? Once you have all your tools assembled, you begin the ritual of checking each piece, not because you expect to find something new, but because routine is the only defense against despair. You trace the net with your fingers, pulling at the knots, testing their strength. You examine the basket, prodding the sides to see where the reeds are rotting. You run your thumb along the knife, feeling for chips and cracks. Each task is a small prayer. Let this not be the day everything breaks. Outside, the others are gathering their gear as well. No one speaks because there is nothing new to say. You all know the story already. Whose net is the worst, whose knife is the dullest, whose basket is most likely to collapse. The only thing that changes is the order in which you all suffer. There is a kind of grim camaraderie in this, a mutual understanding that at least you are not alone in your misery. Every so often, Someone will try to make a joke. At least the holes in the net make it lighter. Or, I hear fish love a challenge. You laugh, if only because the alternative is to cry. Irony is the only balm for this kind of monotony. You take stock of your clothing as well. Your leggings are torn and stained, the edges stiff with old fish guts. Your shirt, patched so many times it looks like a map of misery, is no protection against the morning chill. Your shoes are more whole than leather, and you feel every pebble, every root, every frozen lump of mud as you walk. Sometimes you wonder what life would be like with good tools. Sometimes you try to remember the stories, those tales told by the oldest among you, of a time when baskets held water, knives sliced like wind, and nets sang through the air like wings. But those are only stories. Your reality is splinters and knots, cold hands, and endless disappointment. By the time you are ready, your hands already ache. The tools are heavy, even when empty. You gather them up, balance the basket on your hip, loop the net over your shoulder, tuck the knife into your belt, and stare down the path that leads to the river. Every step is a reminder that you are alive, and that being alive is just another word for being tired. There is no hope for something better, not today, not tomorrow. There is only the routine, the endless, repetitive, grinding preparation for a day that will be just like all the others. And yet, you go, because that is what you do. That is what is expected of you. You are a fisherman, and this is your burden. You step out into the gray, pre dawn world. There is a moment, a fraction of a breath, when you allow yourself to hope that maybe today the mud will be drier, the path easier, your own bones less heavy. But the hope is weak, flimsy as your net, and the world wastes no time shattering it. The first thing you feel as you move away from your shelter is the cold, damp embrace of the earth. It does not matter how many times you have walked this path, the sensation never improves. The land under your feet sucks and squelches, greedy for your every step. The trail to the river has no beginning or end. It is less a path than a series of trampled scars across the land, made by generations of feet just like yours, each one driven forward by necessity, never by choice. The mud here is a living thing, as spiteful as it is ever present. It clings to your shoes, slithers up your ankles, seeps through every gap and tear until your skin is slick and cold. Sometimes you wonder if it is trying to drag you under, to swallow you whole, and add you to the bones hidden beneath its surface. It rained last week, or maybe yesterday, or maybe 100 years ago. Here, the rain never truly leaves. Puddles, black and bottomless, pockmark the ground, their surfaces broken only by drifting leaves and the occasional insect carcass. You step around them when you can, but there are too many. Sometimes you have no choice but to slog right through, feeling the icy water soak into your tattered clothing. Your toes go numb almost instantly. Your breath forms pale clouds that the wind immediately whips away. You move slowly, not from laziness, but from grim calculation. The path is studded with roots and slick stones, each one waiting to trip you and send you sprawling face first into the mire. Once, when you were younger and more foolish, you tried to run this trail. You learned quickly. The mud is patient and cruel, and every fall leaves you colder, dirtier, and more humiliated than before. Now every step is cautious, deliberate, a weary dance with gravity. There are reminders everywhere of those who came before you, broken basket handles half buried in the sludge, a length of rotted twine snagged on a bush, shards of bone and stone from lost or broken tools. You do not mourn for the people who dropped them. You have enough to mourn without taking on other people's sorrows. Instead, you catalog these remnants with a silent nod, another warning, another ghost, another lesson in futility. As you walk, the stench rises. There is a particular scent to this part of the world, one that is never truly absent, only dulled by the cold. It is the reek of rotting fish, decomposing plants, stagnant water, and the slow, unstoppable collapse of everything into decay. Your nose has grown numb to it over the years, but even so, there are mornings when a gust of wind will bring it fresh and sharp, reminding you that you are never far from the end of things. Sometimes you see the remnants of last year's catch, fish heads and bones gnawed clean by raccoons or birds or something hungrier. You know you will add to the pile soon enough. Nothing here is wasted for long. Everything becomes food for something else. The river, when you finally reach it, is a ribbon of brown water, wide and slow, fringed with dead grass and tangled reeds. It does not welcome you. It does not care about your troubles, your hunger, your hope. It only exists, a vast, indifferent machine grinding down the living into the mud. On the best mornings, the fog hangs low over the river, hiding the worst of the world from your eyes. On the worst mornings, there is no fog, only the clear, pitiless vision of your fate stretching from bank to bank, mirrored in the greasy water. You do not bother to look for beauty anymore. If it exists, it is for someone else. You are here for work, not for wonder. The sound of the river is not soothing. It is the slow, constant shushing of water moving past things that do not move, sunken logs, rocks, drowned branches, forgotten dreams. It is the sound of inevitability. You trudge closer, feeling the mud grow thicker, the ground more treacherous, your heart heavier with each step. There is always the threat of falling. Sometimes you do fall, and sometimes you do not. Either way, the mud always wins. It is in your shoes, under your nails, in your hair. You wonder how much of you is mud by now, how much of the person you used to be has been scraped away, replaced by this sticky, shapeless exhaustion. You try to ignore the sharp stones that jab your soles, the chill that creeps up your legs, the itch that will become a rash by nightfall. You tell yourself it is not so bad, that worse things have happened, and you are probably right. You have seen what happens to those who cannot walk this path anymore. The world simply moves on, and the river keeps flowing, indifferent. At last, you reach the bank. You stand at the edge, your arms heavy with gear, your breath steaming in the dawn air. You look back, just once, at the winding track of mud and misery you have crossed, and you know you will cross it again at the end of the day, heavier or lighter, depending on the mercy of the water. You stand for a moment, just breathing, surrounded by the stink of river and rot, feeling the mud cool against your skin. This is your domain, your kingdom of slime and squalor. You are the fisherman, and this is the price you pay for survival. The river awaits. It does not care if you succeed or fail. It does not care if you slip and drown, if your tools snap and your hope withers. It simply is, vast and relentless. And so, with nothing left but grim determination and the knowledge that no one else will feed your family, you take a step forward into the muck, into the stink, into another day that will be exactly like all the others. You have reached the river's edge, and that is supposed to be an accomplishment. You have survived the mud, the cold, the accusing silence of your own thoughts. But there is no victory here. The river looks at you with the same blank, uncaring face as always, broad and sluggish, dark water curling around reeds and dead branches. Somewhere beneath that opaque surface, fish are swimming, but they are not waiting for you. They are not grateful. They are not even curious. You drop your basket onto the wet, unsteady ground, and it lands with a soft, hopeless thud. Mud splatters up your leg. Your hands, already stiff and stinging from the cold, reach for your net, your precious tool that is neither friend nor foe, but something more like a resentful partner in failure. You begin your ritual. You unwind the net, tugging at the damp, stiff knots, picking out last year's leaves and the remnants of old slime. No matter how carefully you stored it, the net is always more tangled than you remember, always slightly more useless than you dared hope. You try not to think about the hunger gnawing at your stomach. It is a familiar ache, dull and constant, growing sharper with every wasted minute. The sun has not yet risen, but already you feel the weight of the day pressing down on your shoulders. There is no audience here to watch your struggle, just the indifferent rush of water and the lazy circling of a gull overhead, waiting for you to fail so it can pick at your scraps. You choose a spot along the bank, one you have chosen 100 times before. There is no secret here, no magic, no hidden place where the fish gather just for you. The river is the same everywhere, shallow where you need it deep, deep where you need it shallow, filled with snags and weeds and sharp stones that slice your feet if you are foolish enough to wade in barefoot, which you often are. You lower yourself onto a half submerged log, slick with algae and rot, and immediately regret it as cold water soaks through your ragged clothes. There is a technique to this, supposedly. The elders used to talk about the right way to cast a net, the best time of day, the special call you can make with your tongue that will lure the fish. You have tried them all. The river does not care about tradition or superstition. The fish do not listen. You cast your net. It lands with a heavy slap, a puff of silt blooming from the bottom, drifting downstream. You wait. The only thing that bites is the wind, slicing through your clothes and settling in your bones. The river moves as it always does, too fast for comfort, too slow for hope. You try to remember the last time you caught something more than a handful of minnows. Was it last week? Last month? Time slips away here, dissolved in water and repetition. You pull in the net, heavy with mud, choked with weeds, perhaps a single finger length fish that flops weakly, more bone than meat. You sigh. You try again and again. Each throw grows more desperate, more careless, until your arms ache, your shoulders burn, and your breath hisses between clenched teeth. Sometimes the net snags on something beneath the water, a rock, a fallen branch, the skeleton of a fish that got away long before you arrived. Sometimes the net rips, and you must kneel in the freezing shallows to repair it, your hands shaking, your curses swallowed by the wind. There are moments when you almost laugh. You imagine the fish down there in the murk, watching your every clumsy move, shaking their tiny heads in fishy amusement. Not today, they seem to say, and not for you. You cannot blame them. If you were a fish, you would stay far away from anything touched by humans. As the morning drags on, your hunger grows sharper, blooming from dull ache to twisting pain. Every wasted cast is a lost meal, not just for you, but for everyone waiting back in the smoky, cramped darkness of your home. You feel their eyes on you, even from miles away. The disappointment is already there, taking shape, growing heavy. You try to remind yourself that this is not your fault. The river was generous once, so they say. Maybe it was, but you would not know. For you, the river has only ever been a grudging, stingy adversary, giving just enough to keep you alive, never enough to let you rest. You pause, flexing your fingers, studying the sky for any sign of change. The light is still thin and gray, no warmth to be found. The wind picks up, pushing ripples across the water, tangling your hair across your face. Somewhere upstream, you hear the distant, guttural cry of something, wolf, maybe, or another fisherman cursing the same invisible fish. The sound fades, swallowed by the river's endless monotone. You stand, stretch, feel the pull of muscles not yet warmed by work, but already tired. You think, for the 100th time, about abandoning your net and trying to fish with your hands. Anything to break the monotony, anything to feel some control. But you know how that ends, with freezing fingers, empty hands, and the sense that you are no more skilled than a hungry raccoon. You glance down the bank. Here and there, you spot the distant shapes of others like you, hunched over their own hopeless efforts. No one waves, no one calls out advice. This is not a place for community. Not now, not with hunger gnawing at everyone equally. The river demands silence, and you are too tired to argue. Eventually, You manage to catch something. It is always less than you need. Sometimes a small perch, sometimes a frog unlucky enough to get tangled. You pull it free, examine its scrawny body, and try to remember what satisfaction is supposed to feel like. The rest goes back into the water, or into the mud, or into the belly of a waiting gull. You tell yourself that tomorrow will be different, but you know better. Tomorrow will be exactly the same, and the river will always, always find new ways to disappoint you. You settle in for another hour, maybe two, maybe as long as it takes for your fingers to lose feeling completely. There is nowhere else to go. The fish never bite when you need them. They never have, and they never will. The river keeps its secrets, and you keep fishing because that is what you do, because you have no choice, because there is nothing else left. As the morning drags on and your hands lose the last warmth they possessed, the next wave of misery arrives on wings and in swarms. It is not just the cold and the hunger now. The real war is against creatures smaller than a grain of sand and just as relentless. Insects, endless and innumerable, waiting in every patch of shade, every curl of grass, every pocket of river fog. You know they were here long before you. You suspect they will outlast you too. The first to attack are the mosquitoes. Their whining is like a curse, a constant, high pitched drone that rises with the dew and only fades when the cold is sharp enough to kill. You swat at them with muddy hands, but they always return, undeterred, always finding the one bit of exposed skin you could not cover, the tiny tear in your shirt, the crack in your wrist where the cold has split the skin. You slap and scratch until your arms are covered in welts, red and angry, and itching like fire. Then come the midges, clouds of them, so thick you almost choke as you inhale. They get into your mouth, your nose, your eyes, drawn by the sweat on your brow and the scent of the fish guts under your nails. You try to wave them away, but it is like trying to hold back the river itself. They crawl beneath your shirt, settle on your eyelids, burrow into your ears. Sometimes you wonder if you are breathing more insect than air. And always there are the flies, black, shiny, hungry for the smell of rot. They circle your catch, land on your wounds, feast on anything that bleeds or stinks. You have seen them lay eggs in the eyes of dead fish, turning flesh to wriggling horror in hours. You think, with a shudder, that one day you might fall by the river and they would claim you just as quickly, stripping you to the bone in the indifferent sunlight. You scratch and scratch and scratch. The itching becomes a steady, maddening throb, pulsing under your skin, more real than the hunger in your belly. Sometimes you scratch so hard you draw blood, and then the flies are even happier, and the cycle begins anew. There is no end to it. The others suffer too, but no one mentions it. To complain would be to admit weakness, and out here, weakness is an invitation for something worse. The dampness makes everything worse. Your clothes never dry, not truly. They cling to your body, heavy with the stink of mold and sweat. Your feet squelch in sodden shoes, blisters blooming in the darkness with every step you take. Your hands, already cracked and bleeding from the work, now soften and split further, the skin peeling away in miserable strips. You smell like a piece of forgotten meat, something both alive and decomposing, neither one nor the other. You look at your tools, and even they are rotting. The handles of your knife and net are swollen with moisture, sprouting soft fuzz at the edges. The basket sags, the reeds turning black with mold. You run your fingers over them, feeling the rough softness, knowing you should scrape it away, but lacking the energy. What is the point? Tomorrow there will be more. Sometimes the sun appears, and for a few precious moments you feel warmth on your back, the illusion of dryness, the brief hope that maybe, just maybe, you can chase away the damp. The insects vanish for a heartbeat. You almost smile. Then the sun slides behind a cloud. The chill returns, and the swarms come back, twice as thick, as if punishing you for daring to be comfortable. You try everything. You smear mud on your face and arms, hoping the insects will dislike it more than your skin. You tie scraps of fabric around your head and neck, even though it makes you sweat, and the sweat only draws more flies. You even whisper half remembered curses you learned from the old people, words meant to keep evil at bay. The insects do not care for curses. They have their own magic, and it is stronger than yours. At some point, the itching becomes just another part of the day, like hunger, like cold, like the ache in your back and the sting in your eyes. You grow used to it, even fond of it in a strange way. The pain reminds you that you are alive, that your body has not yet given up, that there is still something left to endure. You would laugh if you had the energy. You settle for a sigh, scratching idly as you check your net once more. But the damp is different. The dampness is not just a discomfort, it is a threat. You know the stories about people who lost toes, fingers, whole feet to the slow rot that begins with a rash and ends with bone. You have seen the old men hobbling on stumps, their flesh eaten away by years of wet and mud and neglect. You check your feet every night, prodding the swollen, white skin, hoping nothing has turned black, nothing smells too wrong. You do not want to join them, but you know it is just a matter of time, and so you persist. You swat and scratch, squelch and shiver, wade through the mud and the stink and the ceaseless torment of things that want a piece of you. This is the price you pay for fish that never come, for a living that barely deserves the name. You wonder, not for the first time, if the insects are the real winners here, if you are just another meal, another inconvenience in their endless feast. But still you stay. You fish, you suffer, you endure, because that is what is expected, and you have nothing else. The river keeps moving, and the insects keep biting, and you keep scratching day after day until there is nothing left but hunger and the hope that maybe tomorrow the bugs will be merciful and the damp will let you be. But you know better. You always do. There is a particular kind of hope, that lives at the edge of despair, a tiny, mean hope that today you might actually catch something worth eating. After hours of cold, of itching, of wrestling with knots and cursing the river's stubborn silence, you finally feel it. The faint, promising tug at your net, the sluggish movement that says something living has blundered into your trap. Your hands fumble with the cords, suddenly clumsy with excitement. This is the moment you have waited for, the moment that keeps you crawling through mud and swatting flies day after hopeless day. With a grunt, you haul the net in. It is heavier than before. For a brief second, you imagine a feast, a wriggling, shining mass of fish, so many that your battered basket will finally be put to the test. You imagine the look on your family's faces, relief, perhaps even something like pride. You imagine eating until your belly aches for a good reason. The river is silent, and for once it almost seems generous. But the net comes out of the water, and hope shatters, as always, against reality. You have caught two fish, not two large, beautiful fish, fat with the bounty of summer. No, you have caught two miserable specimens, each no bigger than your hand, skinny as twigs, with bulging eyes and missing scales. One is so thin you can see the curve of its bones through its skin. The other is so battered that it barely flops when you pull it free, its flesh torn from some earlier escape or from the teeth of a rival. You stare at them, and for a moment you consider throwing them back, but you cannot afford mercy. Hunger eats at you with a sharper bite than pity ever could. You untangle the first fish from the net, its slime coating your fingers, its gills opening and closing in a slow, desperate rhythm. The second fish slips from your grasp and lands in the mud. Of course it does. Now it is coated in grit and dirt, and as you pick it up, it leaves a trail of filth along your palm. You think, almost fondly, that you have never eaten a clean meal in your life. You sit back, exhausted, the two fish lying side by side in the basket. Together, they are barely enough to make a meal for a child. But today, they must feed your whole family, and you know already that the best you can offer at home is a promise that tomorrow will be better. You try not to think of the hunger in your siblings' faces, the sharpness in your mother's voice when she sees your catch. You try not to think at all. The sky has grown lighter, the river wider and more restless. The cold has settled into your bones. You look at your hands, raw, cracked, and now slimy with fish blood and river mud. Your stomach growls, a sound loud enough to frighten away any other fish that might be foolish enough to come near. The insects are undeterred, drawn now by the scent of fresh fish and old wounds. You sit in silence, the kind of silence that is not peaceful, but heavy and accusing. There is no sound except the soft slap of water against the bank, the distant squabbling of gulls, and the endless buzzing of flies. You try to clean the mud from your catch with your sleeve, but the sleeve is just as dirty, and the fish look no better for your efforts. You consider eating one now, raw, just to silence the emptiness in your gut. But you know you cannot. You know the rules. You bring your catch home, you share, and you pretend that you are grateful for every miserable mouthful. The worst part is not even the hunger. The worst part is knowing that these two fish, small and sickly, are the best you are likely to get all day. The river gives when it wants, takes when it wants, and today it has decided that you will scrape by, just barely, once again. As you prepare your net for another cast, you notice movement out of the corner of your eye, a flash of fur, a ripple in the reeds. You freeze, half expecting a rival fisherman, but no, it is an animal, some hungry thief from the woods. You watch as it sniffs along the riverbank, searching for leftovers, for scraps, for the same thing you are searching for. You understand, in that moment, that you are not so different. Here, you are all scavengers, picking at the remains of a world that has nothing left to give. A sudden splash startles you, and you turn to see a shadow darting beneath the water. For a heartbeat, you think maybe another fish has wandered into your net. But no, it is gone before you can react. The river mocks you, always. You check your net again, hoping against hope, but there is nothing, just weeds and a tangle of broken twigs. You sigh, shoulders slumping, the thin line of hope in your chest growing fainter with every minute. You glance at the fish in your basket, lying limp and lifeless, and you think, is this victory? Is this what you fought the mud and the cold for? What you braved the insects and the damp and the endless gnawing hunger for? You almost laugh, but your throat is too dry. Still, you persist. You cast your net again, fingers numb and slow. You watch the ripples spread, the current pull, and you wait for the feeling of another catch, a hope as thin as the fish in your basket. This is your life, waiting, hoping, scraping by on the barest edge of enough. And as the river flows on, uncaring, you realize there is always fish, but never for you. It would be enough, you think, if your greatest enemy was simply the river itself, with its greedy currents and stubborn, elusive fish. But out here, even the simple, predictable cruelty of hunger is made worse by the ever present threat of competition. You are not alone, you never are. The world is full of hungry mouths, and every single one is out to take what little you have. There are other fishermen, of course. You have seen their shadows moving along the opposite bank, hunched shapes in the mist, shoulders rounded by the same endless defeat that weighs down your own. Sometimes you can hear their muttered curses drifting across the water, curses that sound almost identical to yours. On rare mornings, one might pass close by, nodding in your direction, eyes dull with exhaustion and suspicion. There is no real camaraderie here, only a shared desperation. If you catch more fish, you do not brag. If you catch fewer, you keep silent. You all know there is never enough to go around. But it is not just people you must worry about. The river is ruled by creatures more ruthless, more cunning, and certainly better fed than you will ever be. Sometimes you see them before they see you, a pair of yellow eyes glinting from the undergrowth, a sleek shape sliding between the reeds, a low growl rumbling from somewhere too close for comfort. At dawn, the forest and the water's edge are thick with predators, each on their own miserable hunt. You are just another animal in the hierarchy, no more special, no more deserving. You watch as a bear lumbers into view on the opposite bank, its fur matted and wet, its movements slow but purposeful. It does not glance your way. Why should it? You are beneath its notice unless you become a threat, and today you are no threat to anyone. The bear wades into the shallows, paws slicing through the water with a casual strength you could never match. You can almost hear its thoughts. Here is a creature who expects the world to provide. You resent it, just a little. You have seen what happens when bears grow hungry and bold. Last year, an old woman from your camp tried to chase one off with a stick. The bear took her fish and her stick, and she was lucky to keep her life. Since then, you have learned to keep your head down, to move quietly, to pretend you do not exist when the real masters of the river appear. Wolves, too, sometimes come to drink at dawn, their bodies lean and beautiful, their eyes sharp with hunger. They do not bother you yet, but you sense the thin line between not worth the trouble and easy meal. If you slip, if you grow too weak, you will become a story whispered among the elders, another warning about the price of distraction. But it is the smaller thieves who are the worst. Otters, slick and brazen, dart in and out of your nets, their laughter a cruel mockery. You have watched one wriggle through a hole in your basket, teeth flashing, and emerge with the fattest fish you had managed to catch all week. It paused just long enough to lock eyes with you before it vanished, leaving only bubbles and the hollow echo of your own curses. Birds, too, are relentless. Gulls circle overhead, waiting for you to look away, waiting for the moment your hands are too full, your mind too clouded by exhaustion. In a blink, they swoop down, pecking at your catch, scattering your hopes across the mud. Crows haunt the riverbank, watching with cold intelligence, ready to steal not just your fish, but anything that glints or shines. Sometimes you find the tracks of raccoons in the mud, delicate, almost human. You know they come at night, prying into your baskets, gnawing holes in whatever you leave behind. You have learned not to leave one thing behind. Not that there is ever much to leave. Even the insects seem to compete with you, their swarms descending on your catch before you can clean it, turning every mouthful into a gamble between hunger and sickness. The flies, the midges, the beetles, each one a rival, each one a reminder that in this world nothing is yours alone. There is no point in fighting. You are outnumbered, outmatched, and too tired to care. You do not blame the animals. You do not even blame the other fishermen. Everyone is hungry. Everyone is desperate. And the river does not care who starves. And yet, you cannot help but feel cheated. You picture yourself as the rightful master of this strip of mud and water, your net the law, your knife the enforcer. But reality intervenes. Every creature here is stronger, faster, luckier, or simply more stubborn than you. You are at the bottom of the ladder, scrambling for scraps, hoping to avoid the teeth and claws of those above. As you watch the bear disappear into the trees, a crow lands nearby, tilting its head as if to laugh at you. You sigh, turning back to your empty net. It is not a question of winning. It never was. Out here, all you can do is try not to lose too badly. In the end, the river belongs to no one, not to you, not to the bear, not even to the fish. It belongs to itself and to the endless parade of competitors that claw and bite and steal for a chance at one more day. You grip your net a little tighter, glare at the circling birds, and prepare for the next round. Tomorrow, it will be the same. Tomorrow, the struggle will begin again. By the time the sun reaches its reluctant peak, if it shows itself at all, your body feels twice as heavy as it did in the early gray. It is not the glorious golden warmth promised by stories or by memories you are not even sure are your own. It is a flat, pale glare that only serves to highlight every bruise, every scratch, every clump of mud on your clothes and skin. Noon is not a time for rest, or for feasting, or for joy. Noon is simply the middle, the hinge where morning's cold misery gives way to afternoon's dull ache. You have stopped fishing for now, if only because your hands refuse to work. Your fingers are so numb you cannot tell if you are holding the net or if the net is holding you. There are shallow, bloody cracks in your knuckles. You stare at them and think, this is how a tree feels as it splits in winter. There is an ache in your arms and shoulders, the kind that has become so familiar you hardly notice it. A background pain, like the ever present hum of insects and the river's constant, mocking whisper. The fish, meanwhile, have vanished. Not that they were ever really here in numbers, but now they are gone completely, as if some ancient pact has been honored. The fisherman shall suffer, and the fish shall disappear. The surface of the water is blank, unreadable. Sometimes you see a flash of silver in the shallows, but it is always gone before you can react. You try not to let it bother you, but it does. Of course it does. You feel invisible, ignored, as if even the river cannot be bothered to remember your existence. There is nothing to do but wait. You sit on a damp, mossy rock, its cold pressing up through your already soaked clothes, and stare into the murk. Waiting is its own kind of labor here, a labor with no reward and no end. You try to imagine what the fish are doing, sleeping, laughing, plotting your continued misery. But the truth is, they are just gone, and you are left behind, staring at a world that moves too slowly to care about your needs. Your stomach growls, a dull, hollow sound that goes unanswered. You reach into your basket to touch the morning's catch, such as it is, but the fish are as limp and lifeless as your mood. There is nothing to eat, nothing to do. You think about nibbling on the end of your sleeve, but it is too filthy even for you. Hunger sharpens every sensation, every smell, every twitch of movement in the reeds. You become aware of how thin you have become, how your bones seem to press outward from beneath your skin, how your energy drains away, not in a rush, but in a slow, relentless trickle. You are not alone. Along the bank, scattered at cautious distances, other fishermen have adopted the same pose of resignation. No one speaks. What would you say? Are you hungry? Did you catch anything? The answers are obvious and too painful to share. Sometimes someone shifts or stands or moves a little further down the riverbank, as if the fish are waiting just around the next bend. You know better. There are no fish, not here, not for you. The sun climbs a little higher, then seems to pause, uncertain whether to bother continuing. The world grows hotter, but not warm, just heavy, oppressive, stifling. Sweat mingles with mud on your skin. You dream, for a few desperate moments, of a breeze, of cool water, of shade. Instead, the air thickens, clinging to your face and arms, promising nothing but more waiting, more discomfort. You consider trying to sleep. Perhaps, if you close your eyes, the emptiness will pass more quickly. But every sound jolts you awake: the sudden snap of a twig, the caw of a gull, the slap of something heavy in the shallows. You are too alert, too aware of your own vulnerability. Out here, sleep is just another kind of risk. Even if you could doze, you know you would only wake hungrier, stiffer, angrier. You glance at your tools, your net, your knife, your basket, all as tired as you are. They seem to mock you with their uselessness. You wonder, idly, how long you could survive if you simply gave up, if you stopped casting, stopped hoping, stopped pretending that any of this effort matters. But you know the answer already. Without the ritual, without the routine, there is nothing left but hunger, and then nothing left at all. Sometimes your mind drifts. You remember other noons, other days, the stories told by those who are gone. You remember being a child, before you were old enough to carry your own net, when noon was a time for play, for laughter, for chasing shadows in the grass. Those memories feel foreign now, as if they belong to someone else, someone luckier, someone less tired, and still you wait. The river does not change. The sky does not change. You are the one who must change, growing more patient, more numb, more resigned. You wait until the ache in your stomach grows sharper than the ache in your heart. You wait until the sun slides lower, shadows creeping back across the mud. You wait until it is time to pretend that the afternoon might be different, that maybe, just maybe, the next cast will be the one that matters. But you know the truth. You always do. Noon is not the middle of the day, not a turning point, not a moment of hope. Noon is just another hour lost, another measure of your exhaustion, another proof that out here, waiting is all there is, and the only thing to look forward to is more of the same. The river, if it has any sense of humor, prefers slapstick. Just when your patience thins to nothing, when you have grown numb from the ache of waiting and the exhaustion of hope. That is precisely when catastrophe chooses to strike. It never comes as a grand disaster, a storm, a flood, a monstrous fish, but rather in a series of small, humiliating collapses, each one the kind of trivial disaster that history forgets and you will remember forever. It begins, as these things always do, with your net. This net is not a net so much as it is a collection of memories, patched and repatched, stretched and strained, until the only thing truly holding it together is your own stubbornness. Still, you cast it with the same hollow ritual, watching it arc through the air, feeling for the tension that signals a catch. Sometimes, if you are very lucky, the net holds. Today, you are not lucky. There is a sharp, wet sound, a soft rip that seems impossibly loud in the silence of the riverbank. You know that sound. Every fisherman knows that sound. You do not even have to look to know what has happened. The net has caught on something sharp, a stone, a branch, a jagged bone left by some other failed predator, and it is now torn. You pull the net in, dreading what you will see, and your fear is rewarded. A ragged hole wide enough for a fish the size of your leg to wriggle through. The knotting has given way, the fibers shredded. A single silvery scale clings to the edge, a mocking trophy from the one that got away. You sit, stunned for a moment, fingers trembling as you inspect the damage. The world shrinks to the small circle of your hands, the ruined net, the mud creeping up your legs. You try to repair it, but your fingers are stiff, the material too rotten to hold a knot. The river runs on, indifferent to your struggle. You mutter curses under your breath, but they are as ineffective as everything else you have tried today. When the net is finally patched enough to use, you are more exhausted than before. You try again, but now you are hesitant, wary. The net feels heavier, more fragile. Your confidence, never strong to begin with, has vanished completely. Still, you must try. There is no other choice. You cast the net and wait. This time, the river seems generous. A sudden tug, a flurry of motion, the unmistakable resistance of something alive. You haul the net in, heart hammering, desperate for even a small success. But as you pull, the net snags again, this time caught beneath a half submerged log. You tug, gently at first, then harder, frustration mounting. With a final, panicked pull, you manage to free it, but the motion tears the hole wider, and whatever was caught escapes, vanishing in a swirl of mud and bubbles. You sit back, shoulders sagging, eyes burning with frustration. Around you, the world is unchanged. The sky remains blank and gray. The river slips past with no sign that anything has happened at all. You are the only witness to your own failure. It is almost impressive, the way nothing ever quite works the way it should. It is not just the net, of course. Every tool you own is on the verge of collapse. The knife you use to clean your catch is as dull as your hope. The basket you carry sags at the corners, leaking water, threatening to fall apart with every step. Even your shoes, such as they are, squelch ominously when you shift your weight, the seams stretched to their limit by endless wet and wear. The river is not finished mocking you. On your next attempt, you manage to catch a fish, an actual fish, large enough to make your heart leap. You clutch it tight, hands slippery with mud and slime, and in that instant, the fish twists, flicks its tail, and slips free, vanishing back into the water. You stare at your empty hands, unable to decide whether to laugh or cry. For a second, you consider throwing your net after it, as if you could somehow reclaim your lost luck by force. The worst, though, is when you manage to catch something only to lose it to a rival. A shadow passes overhead, a gull, bold and hungry. It swoops down, aiming straight for your catch, and before you can react, it snatches the fish from your basket, leaving behind a spray of water and a sharp, mocking cry. You shout, but the bird is already gone, circling high above with your stolen meal. Every attempt ends in disaster, every success undone by carelessness or simple dumb fate. Sometimes you wonder if the river is cursed, if the world is conspiring against you, if every living thing within a mile is united by the sole desire to keep you hungry and humiliated. You imagine the fish and the birds and the insects and the mud all gathering together, exchanging stories of your incompetence, laughing at your endless, pointless effort. In the end, you do what you always do. You keep trying because there is nothing else. You tie knots in your net, whispering angry promises that tomorrow will be different. You cast again and again and again, hoping for a miracle and expecting only disappointment. By the time the sun begins its slow slide down the sky, you have lost count of your failures. You are soaked, shivering, empty handed, your tools are battered, your patience worn thin. The river runs on as if nothing has happened, as if you were never there at all. You pick yourself up, gather your ruined net, your leaky basket, your blunt knife, and prepare to wait once more, hoping that this time disaster will forget your name. But you know better. Here, catastrophe is not an exception, it is the rule. Eventually, hunger wins. It is not as though you were waiting for some moment of triumph, some signal from the river that you have earned a meal. There is no victory. There is only the gnawing ache in your belly, the slow dizziness creeping into your mind, and the knowledge that if you do not eat now, you might not eat at all. You look at your catch, meager, sad, not even enough to fill the palm of your hand. Still, you force yourself to believe that you are lucky, that at least you have something, however small, to break the monotony of hunger. You choose a patch of shore slightly less muddy than the rest, though less muddy is generous. The ground is damp and cold, sucking the warmth from your body as soon as you sit. There is no shelter from the wind, no comfortable rock or log to lean against. You find yourself surrounded by mud, reeds, and the detritus of past failures, Fish bones, broken twigs, and the dark, greasy stains of old fires long since smothered by rain and neglect. With numb fingers, you fumble to start a small fire. The wood is always wet. It smokes and sputters, filling your eyes with a bitter haze that makes you cough. You are grateful for the smoke, at least, because for a few precious moments it drives the insects away, though the relief never lasts. The wind shifts, and the smoke blows into your face, stinging your nose and making your eyes water. You clean your catch, such as it is. The process is perfunctory. Slice, gut, rinse in the river's dirty water. There is nothing delicate or careful about it. You try to remove as many bones as you can, but there are always some left, lurking in the flesh like splinters, waiting to catch in your throat later. You do not bother to scale the fish properly. Your knife is too dull, your patience too thin. You skewer the fish on a stick, bent, splintered, still sticky with sap. The fish, barely thicker than your thumb, curls and blackens over the struggling fire, dripping fat and water into the embers. The smell is not appetizing. It is the scent of burning mud, scorched skin, and old sour smoke. It is the smell of compromise and disappointment, a smell you have learned to accept as the closest thing to cooked you are ever likely to know. When it is finally done, though you can never be sure, sometimes the fish is raw inside, sometimes it is charcoal. You pick it apart with grim determination. The flesh is bland, rubbery, and faintly bitter, tasting of river weeds and mud. The skin sticks to your teeth, the bones jab at your gums. You chew and chew, swallowing without pleasure, only relief. Sometimes, if you are lucky, you find a mouthful that is almost pleasant, soft, salty, rich with the faint memory of what fish is supposed to be. Mostly, though, it is just food, and not much of that. You do not eat alone, not really. The flies are always there, dancing on the edge of your plate, if you can call a palmful of mud a plate. They land on your hands, your face, your food, buzzing with manic delight. You shoo them away, but they always come back, more determined than ever. You suspect they get more nourishment from your lunch than you do. As you eat, you glance at the river, at the other fishermen dotted along its banks. No one looks up. No one smiles. You are all hunched over your own pitiful meals, heads down, shoulders drawn tight against the wind and the weight of another wasted morning. There is no conversation, no laughter, no sharing. Hunger has made you all into strangers, united only by the bleakness of your task. You finish quickly. There is not enough food to linger over. You wipe your greasy hands on your trousers, adding another layer of grime to what is already beyond washing. You lick your fingers, tasting the last traces of salt and smoke. For a moment, the hunger dulls, and you feel almost human. But the feeling passes quickly, replaced by the knowledge that you will be hungry again soon, that this small, mean meal is only a pause in the endless cycle of want. You stare at the remains, a pile of bones, a smear of mud, a thin plume of smoke curling up into the gray sky. You think about saving the bones for soup, for broth, for anything that might make the next meal less empty. You think about how, just a few years ago, you would have thrown such scraps away without a second thought. Now, nothing is wasted. Every fragment is precious. You tuck the bones into your basket alongside your battered net and your dull knife, and try not to dwell on what it means that you are saving garbage for dinner. Your stomach is not satisfied. It never is. But for now, the gnawing ache is quieter, replaced by a sluggish discomfort. You stretch your legs, feeling the cold mud squish between your toes, and sigh. There is still half a day left, half a day of waiting, hoping, and failing. The sky has grown darker, clouds gathering in the distance. The wind has picked up, sharper now, carrying the promise of rain or just more misery. You shiver, but you do not move. There is nowhere to go, nothing to do but sit and wait for the next disappointment, the next failure, the next round of hunger. This is lunch, you remind yourself. Gloomy, damp, tasteless, and somehow even worse than going hungry. But you choke it down because that is what you do, because that is all there is. The river flows on, the mud creeps higher, and you gather your tools once more, preparing to chase after hope that has already run away. You can go hours, sometimes the better part of the day, without speaking to another soul. The river enforces a kind of solitary confinement, everyone scattered at intervals, each hunched over their private defeat, as if proximity might tempt fate to punish you twice. But hunger and boredom are stronger than pride. Eventually, you drift together, drawn not by friendship, but by the bleak comfort of shared misery. It starts with a grunt, a glance, the shuffling of mud heavy feet. Another fisherman slumps down a few paces away, shoulders hunched, face a mask of exhaustion. No one makes an effort at conversation, not at first. The ritual is too well known. You exchange a look, a raised eyebrow, a wry tilt of the mouth. The look says everything. How is your day? The same as yours. How bad is it? Worse than yesterday, not as bad as tomorrow. If you are feeling brave, you speak first. The words are always the same, chewed over so often they have lost all meaning. Any luck? A snort, a shake of the head. Sure, if you count a fish the size of my finger and half a dozen new mosquito bites. You nod. You got a finger-sized fish? Lucky you. I just fed my whole catch to a bird. Birds are getting fat these days, the other mutters. Wish I had their luck. That is as close as you come to boasting. Here, success is measured in irony. You trade stories not of triumph, but of disaster, each trying to outdo the other in cataloging the day's indignities. My net ripped. Again. I swear it has more holes than thread. At least you have a net. Mine's so old it barely holds water, let alone fish. You both laugh, but the sound is thin, hollow, a kind of verbal shrug at the world's cruelty. The conversation turns, inevitably, to complaints. There is so much to choose from: the river, the mud, the insects, the cold, the endless hunger. My hands are so cracked I can barely tie a knot. Every time I wash them in the river, I wonder if a finger is going to float away. That's nothing. My feet haven't been dry since last summer. If they ever dry out, I might just turn to dust and blow away. If I ever get another blister, I'm naming it after you. At least then I'll have some company. You both know that nothing you say will change anything, but the act of complaining, of naming your suffering, makes it feel a little less pointless, a little less lonely. Sarcasm becomes your shield, the only defense against a world that has no interest in fairness or justice. Well, at least the weather's nice, one of you mutters as the wind picks up, driving a fine spray of rain into your faces. Oh, yes, perfect day for fishing. I always hoped to drown on dry land. Maybe tomorrow the fish will just jump into my basket. Or maybe I'll catch a frog and call it dinner. You dream big. Got to. Small dreams starve faster. Sometimes another fisherman joins you, a third, maybe a fourth. There are not many left these days, and the group never lasts long. Someone always gets restless, convinced that another patch of river will be luckier, or that solitude is easier to bear than the sound of your own complaints echoed back at you. But for a little while, you all huddle together, sharing stories of absent fish, ruined nets, and the creative insults you have invented for gulls, otters, and the occasional bear. If you are lucky, someone will try to lighten the mood, though light is a relative term out here. I'm thinking of starting a new religion, the First Church of Empty Baskets. We meet every day at the river, and our only prayer is, "Why me?" You smirk. Sounds popular. I'll bring the sacrificial worm. Worms are too valuable to sacrifice. I'll just sacrifice hope. You talk of home, but only in vague, resigned terms. My wife's going to kill me when she sees what I bring home tonight. At least you have a wife. Mine left me for a man who can actually catch fish. You do not ask if it is true. Out here, truth is less important than the comfort of a shared grumble. Sometimes the conversation falters, replaced by the tired silence of men who have said all they can and know nothing will change. You stare at the river, watching the light fade, feeling the weight of another wasted day. But for a few minutes, in the company of others who are just as beaten down and bitter as you, the misery feels almost manageable. Almost. Soon enough, you drift apart, called back to your solitary struggle. The river is not big enough for your collective disappointment. You nod to each other, a silent gesture of acknowledgement, of suffering, of endurance, of stubborn refusal to quit, even when quitting is the only sensible thing left. As you return to your lonely patch of shore, the sarcasm fades, replaced by the usual dull ache of hunger and cold. But for a little while, at least, you were not alone. You shared your complaints, your sarcasm, your bitterness, and though it changed nothing, it was something, a small, grim comfort in a world that offers very little else. When conversation fades and the last scraps of shared sarcasm have dissolved into the sluggish air, you find yourself again in the long, empty hours of the afternoon. This is the quiet time, the slow slide into monotony, where nothing much happens and the world itself seems to grow tired. The sun, if you can see it, hangs heavy and disinterested, casting a harsh white light that leaches color from the mud and water, turning everything the same shade of grayish disappointment. This is the hour when even the river seems to pause for breath. The current drifts slower, the ripples flatten, and the water's surface turns to glass. If there are fish, they are deep below, hidden from your clumsy efforts, laughing their cold, silent laughter. Your net lies unused, a heap of knotted promise at your side. There is nothing to do but wait, and waiting in the afternoon is a skill you have mastered, a talent honed by necessity and boredom. It is quiet, but not in a peaceful way. It is the hush of exhaustion, the silence of a world that has run out of stories. No birds sing, no wind stirs the reeds. The only sounds are the distant slap of water against mud and the ceaseless, maddening hum of mosquitoes. You would almost welcome the sound of another fisherman's voice, another complaint, even a rival's gloating. But the afternoon has swallowed everyone else. You are alone, alone, but not unaccompanied. The mosquitoes fill the emptiness, a living fog of misery that grows thicker as the sun climbs higher. You swat them away, slap at your arms, scratch your neck, but there are always more rising from the river, from the damp grass, from the unseen depths of the mud itself. You can feel them landing, their needle thin legs barely noticeable, until it is too late, until your skin blossoms with new welts and the itch crawls under your flesh. You have tried everything, smearing yourself with mud, wrapping every scrap of cloth around your wrists and ankles, even muttering old charms you do not believe in. It never works. The mosquitoes are relentless, as tireless as your own hunger. You try to ignore them, to focus on the stillness, but their whining fills your ears, burrowing deeper and deeper until you almost wish for a rainstorm, a gust of wind, anything to break the siege. Sometimes you stand, stretch your aching back, and pace along the bank. Your steps are slow, heavy with fatigue. The ground squelches, sucking at your feet, but at least the motion gives you the illusion of purpose. You scan the water for any sign of life, any ripple or flash of movement, but there is nothing. The fish are ghosts now, distant memories, as unreachable as comfort or rest. You sit again, hunched over your knees, staring at the river. Your thoughts drift, as aimless as the current. You remember other afternoons, other failures, other moments of hope that turned sour. You think of home, of the smoky, cramped shelter, the sullen faces, the endless talk of hunger and hardship. You know what awaits you at the end of the day, and the thought sits in your chest like a stone. Melancholy creeps in, soft and suffocating. You feel it settle over your shoulders, a weight as real as the mud caked on your boots. You wonder, not for the first time, why you keep coming back, why you endure this endless, pointless ritual. There are no answers, only more questions, each one heavier than the last. You pick up your net, consider casting it out of spite, just to feel the motion, to hear the splash, to pretend you are still trying. But you know it will return empty. It always does. The river, the afternoon, the silence, they all conspire to remind you of your place. You are a fisherman in name only, a figure cut from the mud and patched together with hope and stubbornness. The hours drag. The sun moves inch by inch, casting longer shadows, but the relief of evening is still far away. You feel every second, every breath, every sting of another mosquito. You count the bites, the rips in your clothes, the empty hours stretching behind and before you. Time does not pass here. It pools, thick and stagnant, clinging to you like the damp in your bones. Sometimes you close your eyes, try to rest, but sleep does not come. Your mind churns with regrets, with memories of better days, with fantasies of escape that die as soon as they are born. You wonder what it would be like to walk away, to leave the river and the mud and the endless afternoon behind. But you know you will not. There is nowhere else to go, nothing else to do, no other version of your life waiting beyond the horizon. So you wait, you scratch, you sigh, you watch the river slide past, taking with it your dreams, your energy, your sense of self. The mosquitoes keep biting, the silence grows heavier, the afternoon lingers, refusing to end. This is the lull, a pause between failures, a breath between disappointments, a silence so complete it is almost a sound. You endure it because you have no choice, because tomorrow and the day after and every day after that, the river will be waiting, the afternoon will stretch, and the mosquitoes will sing their song of hunger and despair. Afternoon finally begins to slip into something resembling evening, and the oppressive hush of the lull is broken by the slow, reluctant return of movement. The river looks the same as it did an hour ago, as it did 100 years ago, sluggish, wide, pretending at promise. You tell yourself, as you always do, that this is the moment things might change. The fish might return, your luck might shift, your effort, for once, might matter. There is a peculiar stubbornness in this hope. It never dies, no matter how many times it is proven foolish. Your hands are numb and bitten, but you reach for your net again. If you have anything new, a recently patched net, or one you borrowed or cobbled together from the remnants of another's failure, it is hardly an improvement. Newness here is always relative. New just means less broken, less stained, less filled with holes so wide a small child could swim through. You examine your handiwork, the knots you tied with shaking fingers, the patches made from strips of bark and hope. You sigh, already certain this net will betray you just as surely as all the others. Still, you rise and make your way down the bank. Your joints crack, and your feet squelch in the muck, but motion is all you have. You ignore the persistent, nagging memory of every other afternoon, every other failed second attempt. This time, you promise yourself you will do better. You will be careful. You will be patient. You will not make the same mistakes. You cast the net with all the tired precision you can muster. It lands, ripples, sinks. You wait, trying to feel something, anything, other than resignation. The river is cool against your hands, its chill seeping into your bones. You listen for the telltale signs, a tug, a ripple, a sign that your luck has turned. Nothing happens. You pull the net in, empty. You try again and again. Each cast is a little less careful, a little more desperate. Your arms are heavy, your mind wandering, your patience wearing thin. You curse under your breath the river, the net, the world. The mosquitoes return as if summoned by your frustration, swirling around your face, biting and buzzing, their persistence mocking your own. Every flaw in the net is exposed. The knots slip, the patches sag, the edges catch on hidden rocks and sunken branches. Once, the net snags so badly you have to wade in, cursing the sucking mud as you grope blindly beneath the water. Your fingers close around something slimy and cold, a rotten log, or perhaps the corpse of a fish that was smarter than you. You shudder, grit your teeth, and yank the net free, tearing another hole in the process. Someone down the river laughs, not at you, not directly, just the hollow, exhausted laughter of someone who has seen your mistake 1,000 times and knows they will make it themselves before the day is over. The camaraderie of shared incompetence. You glare in their direction, but you cannot summon real anger. It is too much effort. You try to adjust your approach. Cast further, cast closer, wait longer, haul in sooner. Nothing works. You wonder if the fish have simply learned your patterns, passed down stories through generations about the foolish human with the useless net. Maybe they recognize the way your shadow falls on the water, the tremor in your hands, the scent of your desperation. You keep going, because what else is there? Even knowing you are repeating the same mistakes, you cannot stop. That, you realize, is the true lesson of the river. Failure is not an event, but a process, an endless repetition of hope and disappointment, effort and futility. You are not punished for your mistakes. You are simply forced to make them again and again and again until you forget there was ever another way. Your new net is ruined by the end of the hour, no better than the one you started with, perhaps even worse. Its edges are frayed, its patches coming loose. You imagine yourself sewing it again that night by the flickering fire, eyes half closed with fatigue, fingers bleeding and blistered. You know you will, because you must, because to stop is to surrender, and you are not ready for that. Not yet. By now, your feet are soaked, and your clothes hang heavy with mud and regret. You sit down hard on the cold ground, the shock of it rattling through your bones. You look at your hands, scratched, swollen, shaking, and wonder how much longer they will hold out. You try not to think about the emptiness of your basket, the sharp hunger twisting in your gut, the faces waiting for you at home. Instead, you focus on the river, on the way the late sunlight shimmers across the surface, briefly disguising all the ugliness beneath. You know you will try again tomorrow. You will patch the net, make the same promises, cast in the same spots, fall into the same traps. New nets, same mistakes, over and over, until there is nothing left of you but stubbornness and the faint, bitter hope that next time might be different, but it never is. And so, as the afternoon drifts into evening, you gather what is left of your tools and your strength and prepare to endure the next inevitable round of disappointment. The day is winding down, the light turning gray and heavy, settling over the river like a worn blanket you cannot shake off. You look at your hands, scratched, cracked, and trembling with fatigue, and at your basket, still almost empty. The catch is so meager it feels like an insult. Two bony fish, a muddy frog, and whatever else you manage to scrounge or save from the jaws of birds, beasts, and the indifferent water. This is what you have to bring home. This is what stands between your family and another night of hunger. The journey back is always harder than the trip out. Your legs are heavier, your shoulders ache, your mind races with every step. The mud seems stickier, the trail longer, and every root and stone feels like it was placed just to trip you in the growing gloom. You trudge on, the basket bumping painfully against your hip. Every slip and stumble, a fresh reminder that you are returning not as a provider, but as the bearer of disappointment. You think about what is waiting for you, not warmth, not comfort, not the laughter and chatter of a welcoming home. You picture your family clustered around the smoky fire, their faces pinched and silent. You know what they want from you, what they hope for each time you set out before dawn. You know how their eyes search your hands and your basket the moment you appear, searching for a miracle you never deliver. You remember when you were young, when coming home meant running, bursting into the shelter, breathless and wild, certain that something good awaited you. If not food, then at least a smile, a story, a game. Those days are gone. Now every homecoming is a reckoning, and the scales are always tipped against you. As you approach, you hear the usual sounds: someone coughing, the low murmur of voices, the scrape of a stick in the dirt. The air is thick with smoke and something less tangible: tension, the kind that builds up day after day, hunger after hunger. You hesitate for a moment at the edge of the camp, not wanting to walk into that silence. But there is no choice. You have to face them. Your arrival is met with the same ritual. Faces turn toward you, eyes first flickering with hope, then hardening into disappointment as they see your empty hands. A child's face crumples, then goes blank. Someone, your wife or mother, sighs, not loud, but pointed. An elder asks, "That's all?" As if the answer could ever be different. You offer your catch, trying to sound casual, even joking. It was a slow day. The river's playing tricks on us. No one laughs. Someone grumbles about the other fishermen, how they always seem to do better, how maybe you are not trying hard enough, or maybe you just have bad luck. You want to defend yourself, to explain all the things that went wrong: the ripped net, the thieving birds, the endless, pointless struggle. But what is the point? Everyone here knows. Everyone here has lived this day 100 times. Arguments start quietly, like rain seeping into the earth. Someone mutters that you should have tried a different spot, that you should have gone out earlier, stayed out later, found a way to bring home more. The words sting, not because they are true, but because they are pointless. You do not argue back. What would be the use? The blame bounces around the fire, searching for a target. But really, it is aimed at the river, at the weather, at fate itself. But you are the one who came home empty handed, so it lands on you. Dinner, if it can be called that, is prepared in silence. The catch is divided as evenly as possible, which means no one gets enough. Someone gets the head, someone the tail, someone the bones boiled into a bitter broth. You eat in silence, chewing slowly, swallowing hard. The food sticks in your throat, but you force it down, pretending not to care that you are still hungry, that everyone is. After the meal, the arguments grow sharper, less about fish and more about everything else. Someone complains about the cold, the leaking roof, the way the fire never burns clean. Children whine and are shushed. Old people mutter about the past, about how things were better, how you are all doing it wrong. You listen, trying to keep your face blank, but inside you are raw, every nerve exposed. Eventually, the words run out and the fire dies down. People drift into their corners, wrapping themselves in what little warmth they can find. The shelter is filled with the sound of coughing, of restless shifting, of dreams broken by hunger. You lie down in your own space, staring at the roof, tracing the cracks you know by heart. You try not to think about tomorrow, about waking before dawn, gathering your broken net, trudging back to the river for another day of fighting mud, cold, and futility. You try not to think about the arguments that will greet you if, once again, you come home with less than you need. But you know you will go. You always do, because that is what is expected, what survival demands. You close your eyes, wishing for the world to be different, wishing for just one day when coming home means more than empty hands and empty stomachs. But wishing does not change anything. Not here, not for you. Home awaits. But it is not a haven. It is only another battleground, and dinner is just the beginning of another round. You might think that after a day spent straining your muscles and patience at the riverbank, the final insult would be the paltriness of your catch. But the world is never so merciful. No, there is still the long, punishing walk back, every step a reminder that even the smallest burdens can feel impossibly heavy when you are already drained to the bone. There is a strange, almost mocking magic at work here. Your basket is nearly empty, yet it seems to gain weight with every muddy stride. You hoist the basket onto your hip, a gesture so automatic you barely notice the sharp edge digging into your skin. Inside, your haul rattles with every step. A couple of scrawny fish, a frog or two, some half crushed mollusks, maybe a bundle of weeds you convinced yourself might be edible. You try not to look at the contents too often. Each glance is a fresh dose of disappointment. Better to keep your eyes on the path ahead, to pretend that the basket's weight means you are bringing something of value home. The journey from river to camp is never short. The mud, which in this morning only tried to trip you, now seems intent on swallowing you whole. With every step, your feet sink deeper. You pull free with a wet, sucking sound, sometimes leaving a shoe behind. The path is lined with roots that seem to curl out of the earth just for the pleasure of catching your toes. If you lose your footing, the basket swings out, threatening to tip its precious, miserable cargo into the mud. You curse, shuffle, and keep going. Gravity is your enemy, but so is memory. The aches and pains that were only background noise before now scream for attention. Your back throbs. Your shoulders burn. The cord you use as a makeshift strap rubs your skin raw. Your hands, already numb from cold and labor, threaten to drop the basket entirely. You think about resting just for a moment, but you know better. If you stop, the damp will creep in, the fatigue will root you to the spot, and you might not get up again. You pass familiar landmarks, a leaning tree scarred by the claws of some animal, a boulder split by winter frost, a patch of reeds that always seems to rustle with something just out of sight. These are your milestones, the same every day, silent witnesses to your daily failure. Sometimes you whisper a greeting to them, half hoping they will offer a word of encouragement. They never do. As the path winds closer to camp, the basket seems to grow heavier still. It is not just the weight of the catch, but the weight of expectation, the memory of yesterday's disappointment, the dread of tonight's arguments, the certainty that tomorrow will bring more of the same. The closer you get, the slower your steps become. You tell yourself it is just fatigue, just hunger, just the ache in your bones. But you know it is something deeper, a heaviness that lives inside you, settling into your chest like cold, wet clay. There are other burdens too. Sometimes you are not the only one returning from the river. You pass another fisherman, basket slung over his shoulder, face set in the same grim mask. You exchange nods, each pretending not to notice how the other's basket sags or rattles, each silently measuring who is carrying less. There is no shame in failing, not here, but there is a quiet competition to see whose struggle is just a little bit worse. You try to shift the basket, to find a position that hurts less, but it is useless. No matter how you carry it, on your hip, on your back, clutched to your chest, it grows heavier with every step. You imagine that the fish inside are multiplying, growing fatter and heavier with every muddy footfall, but you know it is only your exhaustion that is swelling. Sometimes the inevitable happens. Your foot catches on a root or sinks too deep in a patch of mud. You stumble, and the basket lurches forward, spilling half your catch into the filthy water at your feet. For a moment, you freeze, shoulders slumped, breath caught, fighting the urge to scream. Then, numbly, you scoop up whatever you can salvage, scraping mud from scaly skin, not caring if you cut your hands on sharp shells or stones. The loss stings, but not as much as the knowledge that this is not the first time, and it will not be the last. By the time you finally limp into camp, the basket's weight has become something existential, a burden far greater than its meager contents. You set it down with a sigh that is half relief, half defeat, feeling the ache travel from your shoulders down to your toes. You flex your hands, trying to work life back into your fingers. The marks the basket left on your skin will fade by morning, but the heaviness, you suspect, never truly leaves. You wonder sometimes if those who came before you felt the same way, if their baskets grew heavier with disappointment, if their steps slowed with the weight of another empty evening. You suspect they did. You suspect that this is what it means to be a fisherman here, to carry more than you catch, to bear more than you bring home, to return day after day with less than you need and more than you can stand. And still, tomorrow, you will pick up the basket again, lift it to your aching hip, and set out once more for the river. Because that is what you do, because that is what survival demands. And everything, always, is heavier than it looks. When you finally limp into the circle of camp, twilight pressing down from above, and mud clinging to every part of you, you wish just once that the act of coming home meant something other than another round of disappointment. But you know better. The only things that truly greet you are smoke, complaints, and a kind of resigned misery that hangs thicker than the evening fog. The air is filled with the smoke from a dozen poor fires, all fighting a losing battle against wet wood and inexpert hands. The wind catches the smoke, flinging it in every direction, so there is nowhere you can stand without stinging eyes and a throat rubbed raw. Every breath is an effort. You cough, and the sound is echoed by others, a tired chorus of illness, cold, and exhaustion. In the smoky twilight, everyone looks older than they are, faces creased and shadowed, eyes wary and sunken. There is no welcoming party. At best, someone glances up, registers your return, and looks away again. At worst, your arrival is met with a visible tightening of jaws and a deepening of frowns, as if your presence alone is to blame for the thinness of the stew or the holes in the roof. You set your basket down with a heavy sigh, feeling every ache in your arms, legs, and heart. Someone asks, "Is that it?" And you bite your tongue before answering. You want to snap back, to tell them what the river was like, how hard you tried, how many times you nearly lost everything to the mud, the cold, the indifferent water, but the words die inside you. What is the point? No one wants to hear it. Everyone is tired of hearing it. So you just nod, your silence adding another layer to the oppressive weight hanging over the camp. As the evening deepens, the quarrels begin. Hunger sharpens every word. Petty grievances from the morning, the day before, or even last season bubble up, finding their voice in the flickering half light. Someone complains about the way the food is cooked, about who took the last scrap of meat, about how someone else never does enough, never brings home enough, never tries hard enough. You are often the target, but not always. The misery moves in circles, looking for a place to land. Sometimes it is you. Sometimes it is your neighbor. Sometimes it is the children who learn early how to keep their heads down, how to avoid drawing attention, how to listen for the mood of the camp before speaking. You sit near the fire, trying to warm your hands, though the heat is feeble and the smoke makes your eyes water. The flames dance over damp logs, spitting and crackling, filling the air with more smoke than warmth. You stare into the fire and try to remember a time when this meant comfort, when the night meant rest, when coming home meant you had survived something. Now, it only means you have to survive again tomorrow. The arguments grow louder as the sky darkens. Someone accuses someone else of taking more than their share, of not working hard enough, of being too quick to complain and too slow to act. Voices rise, sharp and brittle. You listen without listening, the words sliding past you like the river's current. You know these arguments by heart. You could recite them in your sleep. Sometimes you do. If the quarrels turn physical, which is rare but not unknown, it is over quickly. A shove, a slap, a burst of angry words, and then both parties slink away to opposite ends of the camp, licking their wounds and nursing fresh grudges. No one apologizes. No one ever does. The night swallows everything, and the next day begins with the same resentments, slightly more frayed. In the rare moments of calm, the only sounds are the low crackle of fire, the restless shifting of bodies on cold earth, and the muffled sobs of a child who does not yet understand that hunger is a constant, not an emergency. You sit in silence, listening to the world close in. Hope, if it exists at all, is a private thing, hoarded in the secret corners of the mind, never shared out loud. Sleep comes slowly, if at all. The smoke seeps into your clothes, into your hair, into your dreams. You curl around yourself, shivering, pulling your patched blanket close. Around you, the camp settles into an uneasy hush, broken only by the occasional cough, the murmur of another quarrel, or the crack of a log collapsing in the fire. You close your eyes, trying not to think of tomorrow, the cold morning, the empty basket, the river that gives nothing and takes everything, the faces that will once again look to you for answers you cannot give. You try to tell yourself that you are strong, that you can endure one more day, one more night, one more round of arguments and smoke and hopelessness. But you know, deep down, that this is not endurance. It is just survival, bare and bleak, stripped of meaning or pride. Tomorrow will be no different. The smoke will sting, the arguments will sting more, and the river will be waiting with its same silent promise. Nothing comes easy, and most days, nothing comes at all. Night in the camp does not bring peace, only a new kind of labor. After the empty dinner, after the smoke, after the quarrels finally sputter into exhausted silence, you turn to the next inevitable routine, mending what the day has broken. You drag yourself toward your patch of ground, gathering up the battered tools you call your own. If you do not fix them now, you know there will be nothing to work with tomorrow and no patience left for your failures. You start with the net. There is always a new hole, a new tear, a new patch of twisted fiber where something sharp or stubborn ripped through your last desperate hope. You spread it out in the flickering firelight, picking at the knots with numbed, swollen fingers. The net is never truly clean. It is streaked with mud, fish scales, old blood, and something darker you prefer not to think about. You try to focus on the rhythm: tie, pull, test, repeat. If you stop, the weight of the day will catch up, and you will not have the strength to begin again. Someone sits nearby, muttering as they scrape a knife against a stone. The sound is rough, uneven, more complaint than sharpening. Across the camp, another fisherman sits hunched over a splintered basket, weaving reeds with a kind of dull determination, hands moving by memory alone. No one talks. Words would only echo the futility of the task. You all know that everything you mend tonight will be broken again tomorrow. Your own knife is in your lap, the edge chipped and blackened. You work it across a stone, pretending the sparks are signs of life and not the last breath of worn out metal. The handle is slick with sweat and old fish oil, the wood worn down until it barely fits your grip. Sometimes, when you sharpen it, you wonder what would happen if you pressed too hard, if the blade snapped, if your hand slipped, if you lost your only tool to the fire or the mud. The thought lingers, uncomfortable and familiar. You glance at your basket, the bottom sagging under the weight of too many failed repairs. You poke at the reeds, reweaving what you can, but the gaps are multiplying. Each time you patch one, another opens. You wonder how many more days it will last before it collapses completely, spilling what little hope you carry into the mud. Around you, the camp is alive with quiet activity. Some are tying new fishing lines from tough, brittle grasses, twisting them between their palms until the fibers fray and snap. Others are rummaging through piles of broken bone hooks, searching for one that is only slightly less useless than the rest. The children watch, silent and wide eyed, learning the lesson early. Nothing is ever new here, and everything must be fixed or replaced by hand. You try to plan for tomorrow, but the plans are as tattered as your net. Maybe I will go farther downstream, you think. Maybe I will try a new spot, or use a different bait, or cast before the sun has risen. The ideas are as thin as the gruel in your stomach. You know you will do what you have always done, because it is all you know. You will trudge to the river, cast your patched net, and pray for a miracle that never comes. The others talk, sometimes about leaving, about finding another river, another forest, another patch of land where the fish are plentiful and the ground is kind. But the stories always end the same way, with someone coming home empty handed, with someone falling ill, with someone disappearing into the trees, never to return. Hope is rationed here, handed out in smaller and smaller pieces as the nights grow longer and the nets grow thinner. The fire burns lower, the smoke is less now, but it still stings your eyes, making the world swim in shades of gray and orange. You feel the ache in your back, the sting in your hands, the grinding fatigue in every joint. You want to sleep, but you know there is work left to do. Always more work, always more to fix, more to patch, more to prepare for the same pointless effort tomorrow. You listen to the mutters and sighs, the soft rustle of reeds, and the snap of twigs. Someone curses quietly as a knot slips loose. Another person laughs, soft and bitter, at the absurdity of it all. You do not join in. Your own laugh is buried too deep under the weight of the day. Eventually, when your fingers are too numb to tie another knot and your eyes blur from the smoke, you set your tools aside. You stretch out on the cold ground, the patched blanket drawn tight, the repaired net bundled beside you like a tangle of old regrets. You stare at the stars, or what you can see of them through the haze, and try to believe that tomorrow might be different. But even your dreams are patched and frayed, full of holes and sharp edges. Sleep is no escape. It is just a pause before the next round of mending, the next round of failure, the next round of plans that lead nowhere. This is evening in the camp, the slow, grinding repair of tools and hope alike. You fix what you can, you promise yourself you will do better, and you fall asleep knowing that nothing you do tonight will ever be enough for tomorrow. You would think the day's misery would finally end with sleep. That night would offer at least the relief of unconsciousness or the mercy of forgetting. But even darkness refuses to be kind. Sometimes, when hunger is sharpest, or when the elders mutter about how empty the baskets have been, you are forced out again into the black, long after any sane person would have given up. This is the night shift, a time for desperate fishing, for cold fear, for the kind of exhaustion that creeps into your bones and never leaves. The night is different from the day. The river is the same, still stubborn and uncooperative, but now it is hidden under a shifting blanket of shadows. You gather your tools, the ones you so carefully mended only hours ago, and step out into a world that feels both smaller and much, much larger. Every tree, every bush, every puddle looks unfamiliar in the darkness. Your feet remember the path better than your eyes. You follow them, trusting memory more than vision. The moon, if you are lucky, offers a little light, just enough to make the shadows more confusing. If you are unlucky, the clouds roll in, and you walk by touch, each step slow, every breath a prayer that you will not trip, or step into a hole, or fall into the river itself. The camp fades behind you, its dim fires shrinking to faint embers. Ahead, only the river and whatever waits in the dark. Night brings new dangers, and old ones sharpen. You are never alone. Animals that kept their distance in daylight prowl the edges of the water now, their eyes glinting at the edge of your vision. You hear the snap of a branch, the rustle of reeds, the low, hungry cough of something bigger than you want to imagine. You grip your knife a little tighter, though you know it would be little use against anything truly determined. The thought of meeting a bear, or a pack of wolves, or even another hungry human in this darkness is enough to set your heart pounding. Every sound is magnified: the slap of water against stone, the splash of something moving just out of sight, the distant call of an owl or fox. Your nerves, frayed already, are worn raw. You want to work quickly, quietly, but your hands tremble. The net feels heavier than ever, its damp weight dragging at your arms. You kneel by the river, the mud even colder now, sucking warmth from your body as fast as you can shiver it out. You cast the net, wincing at the noise it makes as it hits the water, certain that every creature for miles can hear you. The river in the dark is a living thing, restless, untrustworthy, whispering to itself. Your mind fills in every gap with fears both real and imagined. Sometimes you think you see things moving just below the surface, shapes that are too big, too strange to be fish. You wait, eyes straining to make sense of the shifting darkness. You think about all the stories you have heard, the spirits that walk the banks at night, the ghosts of those who drowned, the monsters that drag the careless into the water. You do not believe them, not really, but alone, in the night, with your teeth chattering and your hope nearly gone, you believe in everything. You believe in anything that might explain the emptiness you feel. When you finally pull the net, there is almost nothing to show for it. Maybe a wriggling eel, slick and mean, or a handful of tiny, twitching fish that look even more pathetic by firelight than by day. You hate the idea of eating them, but you know you will. The hunger does not care about dignity, or disgust, or fear. You do not linger, you cast again and again, muscles aching, mind spinning with every distant noise. The mosquitoes are still here, somehow even more determined in the cool, damp night. They find every exposed inch of skin, feasting without hesitation. You slap and scratch, teeth gritted, but they do not care about your discomfort any more than the river does. The fear never truly leaves you, not even when you finally turn back. Sometimes you think you hear footsteps behind you, too light for any animal you know, too soft for comfort. You hurry, stumbling over roots, barely able to see your own hands. Your heart pounds, but you keep moving. You cannot afford to stop, not even for a moment. By the time you return to camp, you are shivering so hard you can barely walk. Your haul is pitiful, but it is better than nothing, and that is the best you can say. You avoid the fire, slipping quietly back to your patch of earth, hoping no one sees how little you have. You burrow under your blanket, muscles still twitching with cold and fear. As you lie there, listening to the night sounds, and the slow, restless breathing of those around you, you realize that the darkness offers no rest. It is just another part of the endless struggle, another round of labor, another measure of disappointment, another layer of fear. In the world you inhabit, even the night refuses to be kind. You close your eyes, wishing for a different life, a different world, one where fishing in the dark means something more than cold hands and terror. But wishes are for other people, not for you. For you, there is only the night shift and the knowledge that tomorrow you will do it all again. Perhaps it is the law of averages, or perhaps just the river's twisted sense of humor. But once in a while, after days or weeks of nothing, you are granted a moment of unlikely luck. It happens suddenly, almost by accident, never when you expect it, never when you most need it. After a night of fishing in the dark, after days of disappointment and weeks of empty promises, you feel something tug at your net with a weight and urgency that makes your tired heart lurch. For a second, you do not believe it. You have learned not to trust hope. It is a dangerous habit, a sure way to disappointment. But there it is again. Something real, something heavy, something more than the usual slippery eel or handful of half-dead minnows. Your hands, numb and clumsy, fumble with the net, half expecting to find nothing but weeds and mud. Instead, you haul out a fish so fat and silver that for a heartbeat you forget yourself. It thrashes in the twilight, scales flashing, its body solid and alive. You stare in disbelief, waiting for the river to snatch it back, for a bird to swoop down and steal your miracle. But for once, nothing goes wrong. You clutch the fish to your chest, its weight almost shocking, and for a brief moment, something like joy flickers in your chest. You did it. Against all odds, against the mud and the mosquitoes and the river's cruelty, you have something to show. For a few precious minutes, you are not a failure. You are not a walking disappointment, not just a carrier of hunger and bad news. For once, you are a fisherman with a real catch. You cannot help yourself. You allow a crooked, disbelieving grin to spread across your face. You imagine the faces at home, the shock, the sudden hope, the possibility of a meal that is more than bones and bitterness. Maybe tonight there will be laughter. Maybe, just maybe, there will be pride. You hurry back to camp, the fish held tight, your stride lighter than it has been in months. The familiar landmarks, the leaning tree, the scarred boulder, look different somehow, transformed by the prospect of enough food. When you arrive, you hold the catch high, unable to keep the excitement out of your voice. People gather round, drawn by the smell of fresh fish and the whisper of good fortune. For a brief, shining moment, you are a hero. Children press close, eyes wide. Even the adults, usually so grim, cannot hide their surprise. Someone laughs, a real, warm laugh, and you allow yourself to believe for just a moment that things are changing, that the river has finally relented, that your luck has turned. The meal is prepared with ceremony. if such a thing is possible here. The fish is roasted slowly, its skin crackling over the fire, the smell filling the air and masking, for once, the ever present stench of smoke and mud. You savor every bite, the flesh rich and oily, the taste so much more than the sum of your endless hunger. You eat slowly, as if drawing out the moment could make it last forever. For the space of an evening, misery loosens its grip. There are even stories told, old jokes dusted off, a ghost of the community you remember from a childhood that feels like someone else's memory. The children fall asleep with full bellies, their faces relaxed for the first time in weeks. The adults, too, sit a little straighter, their eyes less haunted. But the irony arrives with the dawn, cold and unmistakable. When you wake, the hunger has already returned. The fish is gone, reduced to bones and ash, and a memory that stings more than it soothes. No one mentions the meal. The relief of last night is just a story now, barely more substantial than a dream. You look at your empty hands, your patched basket, your battered net, and you know the truth. Nothing has changed. The river is the same. The mud is the same. The routine is waiting for you, every bit as hungry as you are. The others are quiet, as if embarrassed by their brief lapse into hope. The old arguments stir again. The children begin to whine. You catch someone eyeing you with expectation, as if you might conjure another miracle from the muddy water, as if luck could ever be anything but a joke at your expense. You feel a surge of anger at the river, at your own foolishness, at the way hope always turns sour. You realize that fleeting joy is the cruelest gift of all. It does not heal, does not change, does not stay. It reminds you, only too sharply, of what life could be, should be, and then snatches it away, leaving you more hollow than before. You almost wish for endless disappointment, for the comfort of knowing not to expect anything, not to risk feeling let down. But this is the pattern: a lucky catch, a bitter laugh, a night of fullness, and then the gray weight of the same old morning. The only thing that truly endures is the routine, relentless, grinding, and always ready to swallow you up again. You trudge back to the river, the taste of last night lingering like an old scar, and tell yourself not to hope. It is easier that way. You cast your net, your hands already forgetting the feeling of fullness, and the world goes on exactly as before. Night settles slowly over the camp, bringing with it the kind of darkness that blots out everything but the embers of the fire and the cold ache in your bones. The day is over, though it is hard to mark exactly where it ended. There is no clear line between one round of misery and the next, only a gradual descent into exhaustion that leaves you hollow and heavy, staring into the dark with eyes that barely register the world around you. You move on instinct, each action a ritual carved by repetition and necessity. You tend the last scraps of fire, nudging them into reluctant life, hoping for a few more minutes of warmth before sleep. You check your hands, cracked, swollen, caked in a permanent layer of dirt that never fully washes away. Every movement feels like an effort, as if the day's failures have settled into your joints, turning your body into something old and stubborn long before its time. The camp is quiet, or as quiet as it ever gets. The arguments have faded into muttered complaints. The children's tears dried up for now. Around you, the shapes of your family and neighbors curl on the ground, drawing their patched blankets tight, finding what comfort they can in a world that offers so little of it. You watch the way they move, the way they breathe, the way they settle into a sleep that is never deep enough, never long enough. Every sigh, every cough, every restless toss is a reminder that the day has stolen more than it gave. You try not to think about tomorrow. You try to focus only on the present, on the fire, the slow cooling of your limbs, the rough texture of your blanket against your cheek. But your mind is a stubborn animal, dragging you back to all the things you did not do, did not catch, did not say. You replay the day in your head, the stinging cold of dawn, the mud sucking at your feet, the weight of the empty basket, the hollow arguments, the brief, bitter flash of hope that vanished before it could take root. There is no comfort in these memories, only a dull resignation. You have learned not to expect miracles, not to trust the rare moments of good fortune. Joy, you know, is a visitor who never stays. The river always takes back what it gives, sometimes more, and you are left to start again with less than you had the day before. Exhaustion is a blanket of its own. It covers you, presses you down, dulls your thoughts until even regret is muted. You feel the slow, steady throb of your heartbeat, the ache in your legs and back, the soft sting of old wounds that never quite heal. You lie still, listening to the small sounds of the night, the hiss of wind through broken walls, the distant splash of water, the soft buzz of insects that never sleep. There is no illusion left, no story to tell yourself about things getting better. This is your life, a cycle of labor, disappointment, and uneasy rest. You are a fisherman because you have no choice, because someone must wade into the mud and face the river and return, however empty handed, to those who wait. There is a kind of honor in that, perhaps, but you are too tired to care. Honor does not fill your belly or warm your hands. You close your eyes and try to will yourself into sleep. For a moment, the darkness feels absolute, as if you have been swallowed by the world itself. You imagine a future where this is different, a future where your hands are clean, where your basket is heavy with food, where coming home means more than another round of disappointment. But you do not believe in that future. Not really. You know that when the dawn comes, you will rise again, follow the same path, shoulder the same burdens, and hope only for enough to survive another day. This is not hope, not anymore. This is simply endurance, a refusal to quit, even when quitting would almost be a relief. You do not dream. If you do, you never remember. The world outside the fire is cold and endless, and you are just one small part of it, moving through the same motions as those who came before and those who will come after. Tomorrow, you will wake to the same darkness, the same cold, the same gray, pitiless river. Tomorrow you will gather your gear, patch your nets, and walk the muddy path with your head down. Tomorrow you will carry the weight of empty hope and the heavier weight of duty. And tomorrow you will remind yourself, because there is nothing else to do, that surviving is its own kind of stubborn victory, even when it feels like nothing at all. The night thickens, the fire dies. You sink into a sleep as heavy as your heart, knowing without illusion or comfort that when you wake, everything will begin again, just as bleak, just as endless, just as real.